it's Jason from the Centre for Computing History, and I'm here with Jim Boulton, a digital archaeologist, and we're at the 64 Bits exhibition at Here East. Jim, tell us about the exhibition.
So, yeah, it's called 64 Bits. It's made up of 32 exhibits, mainly websites, and 32 pieces of computer art. 64 bits.
Nice.
And what we're trying to do is just tell the story of the history of the web, particularly Web 1.0 from 1991 to 2005.
Because everything has changed, hasn't it? You know, you go from those days of just dial-up modems that we have here. So much has changed in such a short space of time. It's changed who we are as people.
I mean, that's right. What's amazing to me is now the web's everywhere now, and the internet's everywhere. We're like online the entire time. And what's amazing to me that we haven't kind of documented and preserved the early years of the web. Like, obviously, the web, I think, is as important as a printing press. There's 48 copies of the Gutenberg Bible, which was the first book printed on the movable type printing press, yet there's no copies of the first website. The first website we've got is from March 1992, like 7 months after it was invented. Tim Berners-Lee did a save as for the first 7 months. So I think that's typical of the story of a lot of websites. It's kind of a forward-thinking industry. We're not really good at looking backwards, and we haven't preserved those early years. Everyone mentions the Internet Archive, but that didn't start recording websites and documenting them until late '96. So the first 5 years of the web are just not been preserved and documented as they should have been.
Indeed. So what is the first exhibit we've got here at the exhibition?
So the first exhibit is the acoustic coupler. It predates the web by some time. This particular modem, the Lex 11, is from, I saw an advert for it from 1982. I'm led to believe it was still being used well into the mid 80s. And for any of you like me who kind of got into the internet through films like War Games, I think you will have seen Matthew Broderick like hacking into the Pentagon's computers using a modem like this. And we try and make the exhibition as hands-on, as interactive as possible. So on this old-fashioned telephone, we've got the sound of an acoustic modem.
All right, yeah. That brings back memories. So people can hear it there. Anybody of a certain age will remember that very, very clearly.
Yeah, and literally you just used to put the receiver on top of the acoustic coupler as simply as that, and the acoustic coupler would turn the analog signal into a digital signal. And I just can't believe that then, this is only 30 years ago. It looks like something that might have been around in the 60s, but not in my lifetime.
Right, so this is the next in the display, Archie. Tell us about it.
So the next exhibit also predates the web. It's Archie, which is the first search engine, searched FTP sites rather than URLs, and it was created by a guy called Alan Emtage. And I'm just amazed that he's not famous. You would have thought that the person who invented the search engine would be world famous and very wealthy, and I don't think he's either of those two things. He actually went to school in Barbados with my neighbour. But it was at McGill University in Montreal, Canada, where the search engine was invented. We actually had someone come down to the show from the university, and I had no idea that the search engine was invented at that university. And you would have thought the university would be screaming about it from the rooftop. So this kind of sums up one of the things that I try and do with the show. I think a lot of times the stories of the business guys, the entrepreneurs that have exploited the web and the world of computers are often famous, but the engineers and the artists that kind of built it and shaped it quite often aren't. And I think no one sums that up more than Alan Emtage. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think that's a story that goes throughout the whole of computing history. It's always those people that exploit it, like you say. It's fantastic. And this is running on a lovely colour classic map.
So So the exhibit here, although the search engine was invented in 1989, initially had a command line interface, and I believe you could actually email Archie your search requests, and it would email you back the results. This interface is from 1993, so we've got it running on a Macintosh Colour Classic from the same year. And actually, Archie still works. There's some guys in Poland at the University of Warsaw who keep the servers running, so you can actually do a live search on Archie most of the time.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, so this is quite a recognisable machine, at least to me anyway. This is the Next Cube, and tell us about this exhibit.
Yeah, so here we have the first website, invented by Tim Berners-Lee, of course. I think he wrote the proposal in '89, but as far as I know, it didn't go online till '91. And I think one thing that's easy to forget is, of course, when Tim Berners-Lee made the first website, he also had to make the first web browser. So in this show, we try and show each website on the hardware and software of the time. So if it's a website from '91, we show it on a machine from '91, and a browser, in this case, from '91, which is the Nexus browser, which is what Tim Berners-Lee called the first browser. I think what's interesting about it is that it's got an edit function just here. So it's just interesting to me that obviously he didn't discriminate between the creators of websites and the consumers of websites. It was all kind of one happy family of creators and consumers. And the other thing is it's got quite an interesting navigation panel. There's two ways of navigating the site. You can either click around on the links as you would today, and it opens up a new browser, or you can use this navigation panel and open up the pages sequentially, almost like a slideshow.
Right, yeah.
So you can actually view the website in a linear fashion, I suppose like you would a book or watch a film, which is obviously something that's been lost subsequently. So it's when you see the websites in the context of the hardware and the software they were made for, I think it reveals more things about the designers and the creators' original intent. So that's what we try and do with the whole show. Yeah,
because the browser is very much a part of that story, and the way somebody's thought processes about how it should work.
Absolutely,
I mean, having everybody edit something whilst in, there is a benefit to that, and we've seen Wikipedia and things like that, but you can't have it like that for everything. So having it as a built-in function isn't going to work across the board. But interesting stuff.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. And obviously you can see this on the CERN website, and but you see it on today's browsers, at today's processing speeds, on today's flat screen monitors. You just don't get the same feel that you do when you see it in the original environment.
Absolutely.
So the next exhibit in the show is DrFun from 1993, and it's the first cartoon on the net. And it's quite amazing to me to think that 1993, we've got this colour image, we've got a cartoon, we've got a joke, and only 2 years previously we've got text-driven, black and white web. So when these types of websites came along, it must have opened up the world of the web to a whole new audience and made it accessible to people like beyond computer scientists.
Well, there's quite a lot of computer scientists doing all this stuff as well. So.
Well, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
When they're supposed to be
yeah.
doing science stuff.
Yeah, I think actually like Dave Farley, who put this website together, he worked at the University of Chicago in their library, and I think he was a technician there. So I think he still had to be pretty computer literate to be online at the time. So the next exhibit in the show is from 1993. It's the Trojan Coffee Cam, which was the first webcam, and it was created by some students at Cambridge University. I think they actually put it on the internet first in 1991. And in 1993, they put it on the web, and they got fed up walking down the corridor to see if any coffee was available or not. So they pointed a CCTV camera at the coffee pot, created a website, and hey presto, without getting up from their seat, they could see if there was any coffee in the pot. And we got in touch with Quentin Stafford Fraser, who actually created the website in the first place, and asked him if he had the code, and of course he didn't. And so we've recreated this from screenshots and conversations with him, and there's a clip on Look East, I think, from about 1994 that talks about the Trojan Room coffee pot. So I call myself a digital archaeologist. It is all about digging up and restoring lost websites. I think this is a great example of that. We've even got a coffee pot over on the other side of the exhibition, very similar to the one that they had at Cambridge University at the time. And we've got a CCTV camera similar to the one that they had, and we've got a live link.
So that's not just a graphic?
That's not just a graphic.
No,
there's a live link. Nothing's much is happening. But if someone did drink the coffee or fill it up,
we'd know all about it.
We'd know about it, yeah.
Again, fantastic use of technology.
Absolutely.
Rather than having a sign saying, please make sure you don't leave it empty, they go and create a whole technical
apparently it only took them a few hours to set it up, apparently. It was quite a quick thing.
Fantastic. Technicians and their coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a logo I recognise. Tell us about this display.
Yeah, Pizza Hut. We've had coffee, now I've got pizza. First transactional websites, some would say. You couldn't actually put your credit card details in, but you could order a pizza, it would arrive, and you paid the guy when it arrived. Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting just to see that two of the earliest first webcam and the first e-commerce site, both driven by our stomachs. Pizza and coffee.
Pizza.
Some things don't change.
And it's running on a Mac LC as well. So
yeah, so it's running on a Mac LC. A little bit temperamental this one, but it survived the show. I think we need to drop a new hard drive in it. Before we get to the next show. But yeah.
Well, nobody making these machines expected to be running this far beyond their sell-by date. So,
no, and I'm actually
so they're all doing a pretty good job.
You probably notice as you go around the show, there's quite a lot of Macs. Mm-hmm. It is kind of intentional because we're going for kind of more interesting looking machines. But actually, they seem to have stood the test of time a bit better than some of the PCs. We've had quite a few Packard Bells in the show, which are interesting looking machines. So,
yeah, can be.
They haven't got the staying power that the Macs seem to have.
So what browser was this running?
So this is running on the Mosaic browser,
right.
First cross-platform graphical browser developed at the University of Illinois. Your viewers probably know the stories, I'm sure you do, but I think what's interesting is at the University of Illinois, they invented the Mosaic browser, mm-hmm. First cross-platform graphical browser, and they had a web server as well. And the guys from Mosaic went off to set up Netscape and became billionaires. But the guys who set up the web server didn't like the way the web was going, didn't want it to be commercialized in the same way that the desktop had, and set up the Apache Foundation. And it just goes to show. One went down the open source route, and mm-hmm. not too long ago, they're powering 2/3 of all websites, and one went down the on the commercial route, and again, eventually had to throw in the towel and became Mozilla and Firefox, of course. Mm. So here we've got Chris.com from 1994, and it's where Chris Johnson keeps his collection of ASCII art. Some of the artwork that we talked about earlier on the walls is ASCII art, and as you know, before computers had graphics cards, people used to make images out of the characters on the keyboard, and Chris Johnson collected them, and this is where he kept them. Right. And what's amazing to me is 1995, the year after Chris.com launched, is the year that Netscape went public and the .com gold rush started. Mm. Just a year previously, Chris was able to buy the URL or the domain chris.com and use it for his collection of ASCII art. So I think 94 must have been like a pivotal year. Mm.
Would it be to go back and get some of those brilliant domains that
absolutely,
yeah. But this time still most people were fairly unaware of the web.
Yeah, absolutely.
In sort of in home life and things.
From my own experience, it was only when Windows 95 came out mm-hmm. and it shipped with Internet Explorer that I became aware of the web and realised its potential. I'm sure it must have been the case for lots of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next display we've got here is a Macintosh Quadra 650. It's got a website called the Blue Dot. Tell me about that.
So the Blue Dot was a website made by Craig Canerick and Jeffrey Darkis of Razorfish. Razorfish was their commercial agency. They made lots of websites for various organisations, but on the side they had the Blue Dot, which was one of the first online art galleries. Yeah. And actually, I think it's rumoured, certainly it's my understanding, that it was the first animation on the web appeared on the Blue Dot website. Netscape 2, I think, came out in 1995, which was the first browser that supported, I think it was like server push, browser pull data streams, mm-hmm. and I think they expected that people were going to be using it for like stock prices and news tickers and the weather and that kind of thing. But Craig Canerick actually saw the potential to actually update images using that bit of technology. But then he realised there was a bit of a bug in the code, and the code that appeared on the Netscape website didn't actually work properly. So he stayed up all night and hacked it and fixed it, and the next morning he managed to get the Blue Dot logo animating on his website. And in 1995, that was the only place you could see an animation. Right. And everybody online rushed to see this fantastic revolving logo. on the Blue Dot website, and I think it's one of the reasons that Razorfish went on to be the successful organisation they were, because suddenly they got huge amount of awareness just because they had the first animated website.
Right.
Now, I think what's interesting about this website as well, it's also the home to quite a lot of born digital materials. So, for example, we've got some of the work here of Ryan McGuinness, who's been on to be a very successful artist. His first work only existed on the Blue Dot. So the Blue Dot in 1995 predates the Internet Archive. So the Internet Archive started preserving and cataloguing websites in late 96. So anything between 91 and 96 hasn't been archived. So one of the things we try and do in this exhibition is kind of raise the profile of the fragile nature of the early years of the web. And this is a case in point. Ryan McGuinness's work only existed on the Blue Dot, only exists in digital format, hasn't been preserved anywhere. So Word.com, made in 1995 by a collection of people, but I think the two driving forces were Marisa Bow and Yoshi Sodioka. Marisa Bow was the editor and Yoshi Sodioka was the art director. 1995, animated GIFs became a thing. A lot of these images up here are animated GIFs, in fact all of them are. Yoshi called it Word TV, and I think there's some of the first animated GIFs online. And I think what's interesting about Word.com, it was one of the first magazines or online magazines that was made for a web audience first. It wasn't like a print magazine that got translated to the web. The web was their first audience. And Marisa Bow referred to her audience as a collection of underachieving subgeniuses. And I think that kind of sums up the kind of people who were online at the time. Brilliant book called Gig, where people just talked about their unusual jobs. And I think the iconic design and the kind of the first person narrative really started to set the template for, kind of a online culture, if you like. It's not high culture, but it's not low culture either. It's kind of just smart and quite sassy and kind of intelligent without being pretentious. So here we have www.jodyorg. Mid-90s, like net artists started to take an interest in the web, probably predates actually, but this is when I started to become aware of them. And this website by jodyorg, I think it's amazing. When it came out, it just looked like a load of garbled ASCII. It almost looked like the website had crashed, or certainly not been coded properly. But then the rumours spread that if you actually looked in the source code, that's where the art was. And in the source code, we've actually got the plans for an atomic bomb.
That's very
which
cool.
I think is quite cool. They're kind of like subverting the HTML to become an aesthetic medium. And I think what they're trying to do is obviously just tell you to look beyond the surface and look beyond the obvious, and actually realise that everything has been coded. And I think it's a kind of learn to program or be programmed message. And Jody have gone on to kind of challenge our understanding of what the web should be and could be ever since. So the first exhibit in the show is from 1966. It's this computer-generated nude made by Leon Harmon and Ken Knowlton at Bell Labs, 1966. It's of a dancer called Deborah Hi. And interestingly, it's the result of a prank. They wanted to create a abstract image for their wall, and they thought they could hide a hidden image of a naked woman in it. Obviously, when they got it on the wall, it wasn't that hidden, and they got told by the senior guys at Bell Labs it had to come down immediately. Interestingly enough, Robert Rauschenberg, a pop artist at the time, saw it and loved it, and he was interested in getting coders, computer scientists and artists together and collaborating on artworks. He saw code as the artistic material of the future, which is amazingly visionary at the time. He saw this image and used it as the backdrop for to launch his organisation, Experiments in Art and Technology, EAT, and it's featured in the New York Times. I think it was the first nude to be shown in the New York Times. Because it'd been in the New York Times, because Robert Rauschenberg, a respected artist, had given it their stamp of approval, all of a sudden Bell Labs were very happy for it to go back on the wall, and for Ken Knowlton and Leon Harmon to tell everybody it had been done at Bell Labs. And I actually helped Ken recreate this image for the show. And while I was working on it, I happened to be watching a documentary on Robert Rauschenberg, and I realised the woman that was being interviewed was the dancer Deborah Hi. And so I emailed her and asked her about the circumstances of the picture, and she said, I never told my parents, which I thought that was the first thing she said. But then she went on to say that the photograph was taken by a guy called Max Matthews, who also worked at Bell Labs, and he was one of the first people, if not the first, to program computers to play music. And he was messing about with his programs in the mid-60s, and he was getting his computer to play Daisy Daisy when Arthur C. Clarke happened to be visiting somebody at the lab, and he heard the music being played and decided to incorporate it in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So it's just quite interesting how, you know, lots of things happened at Bell Labs, and now all these kind of like overlapping stories all came together in, you know, one interesting place because of the collaborations between musicians and dancers and artists and computer scientists.
Okay, now this is a pretty famous one, I'd say.
Yeah.
I first saw this on a TV program that I can't remember the name of.
Ally McBeal.
Ally McBeal, that's
yeah.
right, yep. So tell us about this exhibit.
So here it's a crowd pleaser. It's the Dancing Baby. It's made by a guy called John Chadwick. He was working at Autodesk at the time on 3D Studio Max, and this is the demo file that he created. Someone turned it into an animated GIF. It went viral. I think it's thought of as being one of the first viral web phenomena. And as you said, it appeared on anything from, I think it was in The Simpsons, on
really?
Ally McBeal, I think Third Drop from the Sun. It was pervasive.
It's something about it, isn't it? It's because it's a baby, you know a baby can't quite do that. It just doesn't sit quite right. And I think to a lot of people, that's what the intrigue, you can watch it for ages.
Yeah, it's still got appeal, but I think at the time it was the detail. I don't, you know, people were not used to seeing animated GIFs with this amount of detail in it, or would go on for this long. They were looking at kind of shorter framed, kind of clunkier GIFs, and this one has kind of an amount of detail that they just weren't used to seeing.
Yeah, this would have taken a little while to download as well, frame by frame.
Yeah, the Dancing Baby would now be 21. I wonder what it's doing now.
Right, so this is a name I recognise, eBoy. What have we got here?
So eBoy are a collection of pixel artists, two from Berlin and one based in Canada, and they created a load of pixel art, and they still do create a lot of pixel art. Quite big in the mid-90s, but for their screen-based stuff. And I think what's interesting now is the way that they've moved beyond the world of the screen. So there's a shirt and some trainers, some skateboards, and a load of posters in the exhibition. They also do duvets and soft furnishing, and you name it, they do it. And I think the way that eBoy over the last 20 years have moved beyond the screen to all aspects of our lives is kind of a metaphor for the way digital has invaded every aspect of our lives. It's no longer just about the screen.
I mean, pixel art itself has become huge.
Yeah.
You know, just to go back and look at those individual pixels and create graphics with the limited, I don't know, resolution or whatever, like teletext art as well as another medium that's coming alive again, and using the limitations of what you have, either palette or resolution, still to create something looking cool. And there's a definite style to all this.
And it's kind of, and at the time in the 90s, it would have been harking back to the the computer games of the 1980s. You know, you could create much better imagery than this, well, not better, but more detailed imagery than this if you wanted to. But they were deliberately embracing the 80s aesthetic. And now looking at it now, it's kind of like it's kind of like comfort food, isn't it? It's like kind of comforting to see these kind of early digital works.
I mean, the amount of detail that went into it as well. I mean, some of the sort of cityscape and the isometric kind of stuff, this huge amount of detail.
There's a huge amount of detail, and where they were quite clever is actually they made a database of different parts. So a lot of the corners of buildings and windows and cars and people, they've got actually a database of pre-created pixel art that they can reuse and adapt. So they're quite clever in that way. And it's quite collaborative as well. I think all three artists kind of worked on these cityscapes using this database system that they created. So here we've got a website from 1997, and 1997 was the year that Flash came out.
Right.
And John Crickfalusi, who was the guy who created Ren and Stimpy, got a bit fed up with the TV studios telling him what to do. He'd been fired various times for inappropriate content on his cartoons for kids. Like Mighty Mouse, I believe, did a line of cocaine in one of his one of his cartoons, which was deemed unacceptable. Someone got beaten to death in an episode of Ren and Stimpy, which I think again was, deemed not suitable for kids. So John Kay, as he was known, decided to bypass the studios and use his website to create his own cartoons. The idea being that he could just make cartoons on his own terms. And as he said at the time, you can do it any way you want on the net, which is true. I think he just struggled to get paid for it.
Yeah.
But the cartoon that he decided to make was called the Goddamn George Liquor Programme, which was, George Liquor was one of the minor characters from Ren and Stimpy, and he made a series of like 7 cartoons in very bad taste that were just incredible at the time, because they used TV standard animations, or TV standard animations just were not seen on the web at that time. It used keyframes. It wasn't about tweens. It was actually about really detailed imagery at every level. And Flash is quite divisive. Lots of people at the time didn't like it and still don't like it, and as we know, it didn't stand the test of time. No. But I think it did open the world of the web to a new audience. It allowed illustrators and animators and designers to get into the web, and I think the Goddamn George Liquor Programme, with its inappropriate content, I think it's just it just blew people's minds at the time.
Okay, so next in the exhibition, we've got this beautiful 20th anniversary Mac. So what have we got on the screen here?
Yeah, so as you said, beautiful computer. The website is Kylie Minogue's website from 1997, made by a company called Good Technology. It's a shockwave director-driven site, incorporates film and music and photography and games, and it was like one of the first kind of truly multimedia websites of the day.
So this was when, about 97?
So this is 1997, 20th anniversary Mac. I believe that Apple were incorporated in 1977 when the Apple II came out. Don't know what they were doing the 3 years prior to that, but they celebrated it 20 years later by getting Jonathan Ive to design this crazy looking machine. This is the speaker, not the hard drive. The hard drive is incorporated in this unit here. I think what's amazing to me is that they've used as much space for the CD as they have for the screen. And I suppose it must have been one of the earliest LCD computers and one of the earliest trackpads. Not sure exactly, but yeah, beautiful looking machine. It's got like leather finishing touches to it, and there weren't that many of them made. They weren't that popular. No. They were quite expensive. And
they're limited edition, weren't they? They did only produce a few of them to keep them sought after. And
as I understand it, like the Pet Shop Boys ordered one of these machines and it arrived in a limo. So I don't know if they all arrived by limo or they just got special treatment. But yeah, bit of a crazy looking machine, but a lovely thing. And obviously I think it was the first computer that Jonathan Ive designed, and he went on to design, the classic iMac G3, the iPad and the iPhone, and now is obviously creative director of Apple, gone on to wonderful things, and it all started here.
Absolutely. So this was 97. You've got a director-created website. I mean, that would have been fairly slow to download.
You'd have had to, you'd have had to download the plugins. There would have been a loading screen, and I remember at the time that I thought Lady Screams could be interesting. I really disliked them when they kind of just counted up by percentage, or there's a loading bar. You could download a little game like people used to create little versions of Pong that you could play while it was downloading, and that sort of thing. But worth the wait, I think, in the case of Kylie Minogue. So we've got an iMac G3, obviously the machine that saved Apple, and Steve Jobs came back, launched this beautiful looking machine, 13 different colours, I think, in the end. And the website we've got on it is one nicknamed Walter the Fish. It's by a web agency called Less Rain, led by a guy called Vasilius Alexio. And I just love the fact that as the main navigation system, they've got a fish. And I think that just sums up the early days of the web. These days it's all about accessibility and usability and best practice and getting to the content as quickly as you can. I think in the early days it was as much about exploring the space and finding out things for yourself as it was getting to the content as quickly as possible. I think nothing sums that up more than having a fish as your main menu. So you've got Walter here, who I believe was a grouper bought from Billingsgate Market, and behind each of the vertebrae on its spine, there's a little experiment. So
I've got some sound here as well. Nice.
So we've got a little audio mixer here. And there's loads of little fun things behind each of the vertebrae. But what I think is clever about it is the menu system. It looked to see how fast your bandwidth was and gave you content appropriate to that. So we've got the full fish version here, but if you can go down and you can get the filleted version. If you've got slightly less bandwidth, as you can see here, slightly cut down version. And then if you wanted to go to a even lighter bandwidth here, you've just got the bare bones, which I think was quite clever. And to me, that just kind of sums up the thinking and the attitude at the time. It wasn't about, as I said, getting to the content as quickly as possible. It was making it fun and a place for self-discovery. Almost had more in common with computer games, I think, than the web that we have today. It wasn't about information design. It was about having fun.
Yeah. Okay, another iMac, and we've got the hamster dance.
Yeah, we've had dancing babies, now we've got dancing hamsters, and another crowd pleaser. But I think the reason this is in the show is, well, there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, it just, I think the great thing about the web is it's for everybody, and anybody can make a website. And there was three young women in the US who were having a little bit of a competition to see who could make the best website, get the most visits, and Deirdre Lecarte made a website that was in a homage to her a pet hamster, Hampton. And she made this website which had a load of animated GIFs of different hamsters dancing on the screen. It was an internet sensation. Overnight, millions and millions of visitors. And before you knew it, people had hacked the code and made dancing babies, dancing hamsters, dancing elves, dancing kittens, you name it. It was dancing, and I think it's recognised now as one of the first web memes. The difference between something that goes viral is that the content doesn't change. In a web meme, people adapt the content, adapt it, and it evolves and turns into something different every time, something personal.
So this has sound as well, didn't it?
Sadly, this did have sound. I've switched it. I think it was a single at the time as well. I've switched the sound off because we couldn't have it going on throughout the exhibition.
Come on, give us a quick blast.
Yeah, give us a quick blast here.
I can't imagine why anybody would find that irritating.
No, me neither.
So this is Johnny Nitro.
Yeah, Johnny Nitro. It's a made-for-web film from 1999, and as far as I'm aware, it's one of the first films that was made for the web. When it came out, I just couldn't believe the audacity of somebody trying to make a film for a largely kind of modem, driven or 56K driven modem environment, and they filmed it like they would film a traditional film. Some guys called Tubatomic, based in Kansas, right. And then they just pared it down to the absolute minimum, kind of black and white graphics, giving it a kind of like Sin City graphic novel kind of feel. And it was a story of Special Agent Johnny Nitro.
It's got a very stylised view to it, hasn't it? So again, this is this Flash or?
Yeah, so this is another kind of Flash-driven website. You can see the vector graphics kind of work quite well for the context of the film. And again, I think this is just an example of people like hacking a medium and kind of pushing the software and the machines beyond their apparent capabilities and kind of opening up doors to the next generation of web designers. You've got to remember, this is like 6 years before YouTube. Yep. It's a good long way before we had like proper online video.
Yeah,
you would have had Real Player and a bit of video streaming at the time, but it would have been tiny little windows and not this kind of full screen experience that we've got here.
It's hard to think back actually. I mean, the web is it's just with video. You know, YouTube is so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And back then, it's not that long ago. Yet
No.
you couldn't do it. So you had to find every single way you could possibly get the data rate low enough to actually work. And like you say, this was over modem.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, there would have been a long sort of load time for this. But
hence the kind of stop-start nature of it. Every now and then there's a pause, and I think it's kind of like it's loading the next section.
It's kind of
the film
hiding
in
the buffering,
in the
isn't it? Yeah, clever. You think it's part of the way it's supposed to be presented, and it looks like it is. But secretly behind the scenes, it's getting the next few frames in.
Yep.
Clever stuff.
Beautiful.
Okay, so next in the exhibition we've got MTV2. Now this looks really quite. I can remember a lot of websites looking very technical like this, flash-based stuff. Tell us about this site.
So this website, it's a BAFTA-winning website, one of the first websites to win a BAFTA for interactive or interaction design. And it was made by Mickey Stretton and Bradley Cho Smith at Digit. And one of the things that we're trying to do here is kind of tell the stories of almost like the unsung heroes of the web, the unsung heroes of digital culture. And quite interestingly, I didn't realise I'd only name checked Mickey Stretton originally in the information about this website, and Bradley Cho Smith got in touch and said, look, you know, I did it too. I kind of like worked around the clock, a lot of late nights, long hours, getting it done. It'd be nice if you could recognise that. And he felt like he'd been edited out of history,
right?
You know, and it's interesting that I think it is becoming history, you know, and I think there's a bit of a contradiction in what I do, because what I'm trying to do is like kind of add to the historical record, if you like, the archaeological record, and fill some of the gaps in the historical record. But at the same time, I kind of every time I do that, if I put a new website in the show, or I kind of reference different people or say different things about it, I'm distorting the historical record at the same time, and all of a sudden whatever I say becomes important. So so I'm very happy when people like Bradley get in touch and say, you got this bit wrong, you know, can you do something about it? And of course I try and do that.
That's the trouble when you do this sort of thing. You're always looking back with a viewpoint of now.
Yeah.
You know, and that's always going to be different from how it was at the time.
Yeah.
It's really hard to try and get back to the real truth of things.
And all of a sudden you realise you've actually got a responsibility to get things right and make sure the right people are credited.
Indeed. Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, at that time, loads of websites. I think, obviously, this was probably one of the first, but to have that kind of 3D orthogonal kind of...
I think what's interesting about this, 1999, like MTV, they had a channel called MTV2, which I think was devoted to online, and it was led by the website. The advertising and all the branding was web first, and I think up until that point, the web was like an afterthought. Yeah. You know, you would do the TV ad, you do the billboards, you know, and then you'd have a little bit of cash left for the website, where they kind of flipped that and did the website first, and all the graphics on the website kind of fed into the TV ad and the posters and the branding for the show. So, you know, things started to change around 1999. It wouldn't be, I think, until like the early 2005 that things completely changed. There was a website called Subservient Chicken that was made for Burger King, and it had a chap in a chicken suit that you could give instructions to as if he was on a webcam, and the guy in the chicken suit would do whatever you'd asked him to do. And it got, I think, like 20 million hits in the first couple of days, and it inadvertently launched 2 days before the TV ads, so they could see that it was only like the web, it was only the web audience that kind of created this buzz. And I think that's when it kind of totally flipped, and they realised that, you know, the web was now the driving force, and it wasn't about TV and print as much.
It was also always something, because I was involved with a web design company back then as well, and it was always a bit frustrating that you were always tailing Charlie of every marketing campaign. We're going to do this, we're going to A, B, and we'll do a little website that supports it or whatever, just in case somebody does happen to look online. And it wasn't till quite late on where that did sort of start to flip. By which time I wasn't doing so much of it anyway. But yeah, it was always that, you know, tailing Charlie.
And then, as with all things, it was always kind of young people, and the kids that drove it. MTV had a very young audience, Burger King had a young audience, and they were the guys that realised quite early on that, you know, the web was becoming the first place people looked, and it shouldn't be seen as an afterthought anymore.
Absolutely.
So this website is called PlayStation. It was by a guy called Joshua Davis, who was quite important on the Flash scene. He was the lead designer at an agency called Kerr, and they're a fantastic kind of like rock and roll type web agency in New York. And rumour had it that their interview process was to play you at Street Fighter. And if you're any good at Street Fighter, you got the job. If you weren't, forget about it. And they weren't worried about kind of best practice and intuitive user interfaces or anything like that. They just thought people got it, and people had been used to playing video games for 10, 20 years, and they'd taken the time to work out the controls on video games. Why wouldn't they do the same thing for websites? They did some brilliant websites for like Barney's and Motown Records are a couple that kind of spring to mind. And Joshua Davis, incredibly kind of like generous character as well, in that he had his own website, PlayStation, and every few days he would publish another little thing on his website, which he kind of referred to as his sketchbook. And the great thing about it was he would upload the source code too, so people could download the Flash files and they could see how they worked, and the whole Flash community could benefit from the direction he was going in, which was was an incredibly generous thing to do. And quite rightly, he became adored and became known as one of the most exciting web designers on the planet. Now still very active. I think he's now embraced processing, and still very generous with his time, as I believe. Someone was just telling me the other day he was running workshops for young kids out in California somewhere, teaching them how to program processing.
I mean, the websites here, we've got they're very, very interactive and mathematical. So some of the graphics you're creating there, just by dragging things around on the screen, are quite. Apart from that, they're quite beautiful. They're sort of very mathematically based.
Yeah.
So he obviously had a very good grasp of the programming side of things.
Yeah, definitely. I think he was one of these, characters, like an artist engineer. Somebody who understood code and also understood the aesthetics of things. And they're kind of far and few between. I think these artists who really do understand to program. But I think the ones that do really have the opportunity to kind of push things forward and push back boundaries. And there's an artist called Robert Rauschenberg who just had an exhibition at the Tate. And I think he was one of the first people to recognise this. And in the 1960s, 1966, I think it was, might have been 67, he set up an organisation called Experiments in Art and Technology, EAT, where he was encouraging engineers and artists to get together and combine their creative thought processes, because he saw that code was the artistic material of the future. And I think thinking in that way in the 1960s is incredibly visionary.
Yeah, definitely.
But I totally agree with him. It's like what annoys me when people talk about creatives and developers. It's almost as if developers aren't creative. And I think it's when the two come together, when you've got a truly creative mind that's able to program as well, you come up with some wonderful stuff. And like Joshua Davis is a great example of that. So one of the things that I try and do with my digital archaeology work is tell the story of some of the unsung heroes of digital culture. Susan Kerr, who developed the first Mac interface, I think is one of those people. After developing the GUI at Apple, she then went on to Microsoft and was involved in the Windows interface. She was to Next. She was there when the first browser was developed. She's worked at Facebook and Pinterest. So literally, I think anyone who's touched a computer over the last 30 years has been exposed to her work. But yeah, she's not a household name, and that just amazes me. And she's been very generous. I actually used the paint can as a graphical device in one of my earlier exhibitions, and this came to the attention of Susan Kerr. But rather than suing me, she created me a logo for free, which was an amazing act of generosity. And very thankful to her for that.
Okay, so the Levi website.
So this is the website for Levi's Twisted Denim. It's by an agency called Lateral, and Lateral they're an amazing agency, and they were just so open to collaborating with different people to kind of sharing their experience, and really they had the interest of the web industry and the web design industry in particular at heart. So I ran a web design agency at the time, and they outsourced a couple of projects to us, and were always very kind of generous with their time and their client base, which is unusual. But this is a website they created for Levi's engineered jeans, and also known as Twisted Denim. And because it was about twisted denim, they decided to twist the browser. And they twisted the browser by creating opening 22 different windows, which again, I don't think you get it today. Yeah. So this was from the year 2000. Again, it just sums up the time as well. The fact it was an experimental space, and the fact that they were able to do this just shows how much Levi's trusted them. And whilst it probably wasn't the easiest website to navigate, I'm sure it got a lot of press and a lot of coverage. And the reason it's in the show is because it is so unusual.
I mean, it's not necessarily the done thing. There's probably quite a few machines that fell over with that number of windows open. But the idea of just trying these things, actually, I really like the way it updates there as well, because it goes around and changes the size of the windows, everything.
Yeah.
But it's that experimentation, isn't it? It's coming up with different ways of doing things, just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned it earlier, that things have just become very much distilled into one kind of website now.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason for that. I think responsive design has got its place, and everything does need to work on various different screen sizes, various different kind of like connection speeds. But still, I think we've lost something in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that kind of experimental, just try it. It doesn't matter if it's the right or the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Let's see how it works out.
And if you can get a client to pay for it, more the better.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Always do it with somebody else's money. Okay, so the next display we've got in the exhibition is this one for Bang & Olufsen.
Yeah, so this is a website that I was involved in building. I had a company called Large that started creating websites in '97, and I think this website's from 2000. And what's amazing to me is there was just 5 of us at the time when we won the Bang & Olufsen account. It was like a global e-commerce website we were building, and the fact that 5 blokes with not that much experience in a shared office could win a global account for a blue chip client was just incredible. And I suppose the point is that nobody had any experience. We had as much experience as anybody else. And we had a wonderful time kind of creating the website for Bang & Olufsen. Yeah, I just remember they had one of their brand values was clean up the mess, and they wanted something as kind of simple as possible. Yeah. At the same time, they then gave us a list of 93 links they wanted on the homepage.
On the homepage.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so this is the solution that we came up with. The other thing we did that I probably wouldn't advise is we made a browser. So we threw away the browser and actually made a Bang & Olufsen style browser for them, which was a crazy thing to do. The other thing we did was people could create their own Bang & Olufsen email addresses. There was Bang & Olufsen message boards. It was like a massive site, and kept us very busy for about 3 years. But it really was a labour of love.
Yeah, fantastic. So I mean, Bang & Olufsen as a brand, I mean, it's all about simplicity, isn't it? The style is very sort of stark and simple, and yet they're going to throw 93 links at you for the homepage.
Yeah,
How does that come about? Sure, obviously, those people weren't designing the products, weren't the people that were doing their marketing.
No. But I think we kind of done it. We've got a beautiful little menu system kind of rolling in here. I think it still stands the test of time. Yeah. The other thing they had was like great photography, but most of the photography was portrait. It was made for like editorial magazines, and trying to crop it and recreate it for the web was a bit of a challenge. But they did have some wonderful imagery to work with. And when we lost the account, which obviously at some point you inevitably do, we realised that we had all our eggs in one basket. Bang & Olufsen was 70% of our business. It kind of coincided with the .com crash, and we had a real struggle for a few months keeping the business going, as lots of people did. Yeah. And I just wonder what would have happened to all the code if we had gone under. It would have probably disappeared. Yeah. Like there's amazing, like Deep End, for example, was one of our contemporaries. They made some brilliant websites in the 1990s, but were victims of the .com crash, and pretty much all their code went as the company went under. And you have to then rely on individuals working within the agency to have their own copies of the code. It's about reaching those people and kind of digging it out. And as I mentioned before, that's one of the things we try and do with this exhibition is raise the profile of digital archive and encouraging people who were working on websites in the 90s to send us their old code or dig out their old floppies or their old zip disks or their old CD-ROMs and get the code off them while they still can. Yeah,
it's an important thing because as so much has moved online now. You've got, I don't know, various different things happen within the media. There would be magazine articles about them or whatever in print somewhere, but so much now is just on the web. And nobody thinks, people will update it, and they'll update it bit by bit. But they don't take those backups of how it was before. So you've got no proof of how things were before that latest update or that change was made.
I think the first website is a case in point. It launched on the internet in August 91, but it wasn't actually saved until March 92. You know, so the first 7 months of the web just don't exist. It's not even a screenshot. They've just been saved over. That monumental point in history has been lost forever. I think that's typical of our industry, really, and it's the attitude towards digital, because it is so easy to make a copy. People don't value the copies, but worse, they don't value the original either.
That's true. Okay, so Requiem for a Dream.
So this was made by an agency called High Res that was formed by Alexander Yukovic and Florian Schmidt in 1999. I think the first website they did was called Soul Bath, and it was an exhibition of anti-banners, like an online exhibition of anti-banners. So they were kind of, I think, fighting against the banner and the commercialisation of the web. But their website got 12 million hits, came to the attention of Darren Aronofsky, who was the director of Ada Pie, and this one, this is Requiem for a Dream. And he asked them if they would develop a website for him. But what I love about the stuff that High Res did and still do, they did a load of websites for films, but they didn't actually do a traditional, here are the reviews, here's the cast, here's the synopsis, here's where you can go and see it. They actually recreate the spirit of the film in interactive format, so you can actually go and enjoy the website aside from independently of seeing the film, and still have a great experience. So I don't know if anyone's seen Requiem for a Dream, but it's a pretty depressing film. It's about the horrors of addiction, how your life can spiral out of control and ultimately disintegrate. That's what happens with the website. As you go further and further into the website, the experience gets more and more disjointed, and eventually you just get thrown out. And I think it's very clever. It's very clever what they did, and it's very unusual for the director of the film to let go so much and just allow them to kind of interpret the film as they would like.
As they saw it, right. Interesting.
So here we've got a website from 2002 called City Curator. It was made by Denise Wilton and Cal Henderson while they worked at EMAP. And Denise Wilton went on to be quite big in the Internet of Things world. She worked at moo.com, creative director there. She was quite central to Berg and their little printer product. And then she went on to be the creative director of the government's digital service. Cal Henderson went on to be the first employee at Flickr, and then went on to form Slack, or co-found Slack. And as most of your viewers probably know, it's now valued at $4 billion, and one of the golden childs of Silicon Valley. And I didn't actually realise that he'd gone on to form Slack and it was worth $4 billion. And I got in touch with Denise and said, look, I like the websites to be working on the browsers of the time, like a browser from 2002 in this case. And the website had been updated to run on more recent browsers, but consequently it wasn't working on the older browsers. And I asked her if there's anything she could do about it. She went, I'll get in touch with Cal. And Cal took time out of his $4 billion business to fix it. So
fantastic.
It just goes to show what kind of
top man.
Top bloke, and obviously what kind of fondness people have for the early days of the web and the project they worked on that kind of got them to where they are. They are now. Fantastic.
So what was City Curator?
So City Curator is kind of like, it's similar to kind of like SimCity type game, or like, I suppose, Minecraft now, where you can actually create your own cities. You can add roads and vehicles and people and backgrounds, make these beautiful bits of pixel art, I suppose, and then you could share them with your friends. You could come back to them and save them and edit them. So a whole community of people that enjoyed playing with City Curator, and still do if this exhibition is anything to go by. We had loads of kids coming in. This is one of the most popular exhibits.
It does have that feel of Minecraft and other sort of games like that, where you can build stuff. It's kind of the online Lego, isn't it?
Yeah,
where you can create an entire sort of city based around.
And it's timeless. Like, kids have always enjoyed building stuff, haven't they? And whether it's on screen or in real life, and this is testament to that.
Great.
People love this iMac as well. The iMac, telescopic iMac G4, which I don't know, always reminds me of the lamp in the Pixar movie, so
They
I don't
do
know.
call it the eye lamp.
Yeah.
It amazes people that as you've got the angle there that the screen is at, and as you move it down, the angle stays the same.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, how does it do that? It's
Yeah.
magic. Very clever little mechanism in there. Good stuff. Okay, so Frost Design. It's quite an innovative way of navigating around a site.
Yeah, and so this is the website made by Deconstruct in 2002 for Vince Frost, who was quite a well-respected graphic designer at the time. And the reason this is in the show is because we're just trying to demonstrate that in the 90s it was a bit of a free-for-all, particularly in terms of design. The graphic design world had been spoilt by kind of like 20 years of Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and all the desktop publishing tools. And they had all this software at their fingertips that allowed them to create beautiful graphics. Then the web came along. There was almost a step backwards. There was a limited amount you could do. There was a limited font set. There was a limited colour palette that you could use. And so the graphic design world kind of left it behind, or ignored it for a while, and that left the door open for like people from me who didn't necessarily have a graphic design background, but were able to kind of create websites and kind of like experiment with the medium and kind of explore the constraints. But like this website, 2002, I think this is and this is another Flash website. But obviously, what agencies like Deepend before them and then Deconstruct, they're exploring the aesthetic potential of the web. These guys came from an art and design background rather than the computer science background, and they got a whole different kind of look and feel to other design agencies were exploring the functionality. I think it's just this is the moment in which graphic design started to take the web seriously, kind of 10, 11 years in.
You kind of had those two different ways of coming from it. You had the artists and those people that have been in graphic design for a long time, and their preconceived ways of doing things, and then you had the more techie people that didn't come from necessarily a graphic design background that understood the technicalities of the web, come at it from a completely different point of view.
And then when we talked about it before, the people who created the best websites were the one who understood both worlds. They had a foot in both worlds, like Joshua Davis, we mentioned. There's a great designer called Danny Brown, whose work we've got in the show as well. He created a website called Noodlebox, who was totally able to understand the coding side of things and the aesthetic side of things.
Yeah, that's where it gets exciting. Okay, so we've got, what is this? This is an iMac G5, I think, isn't it?
Yep.
And the IKEA website.
Yeah, so the period that I'm interested in is Web 1.0, which I classify as being 1991 to 2005. There's lots of different ways you could bracket it. That's the way I choose to. And the reason I do that is because I think it's up until 2005, the web didn't really work properly. I think 2005, Ajax came along. All of a sudden, websites started to operate more like software applications. Every time you made a little change, you didn't have to refresh the whole page. And I think Google Maps, was the first website that really worked amazingly. And you could pan and you could zoom without having to reload. So ideally, I would like the first version of Google Maps to be the bookend of Web 1.0. I haven't managed to get the code for that yet off Google.
Oh, really?
I'm working on it. But in the meantime, I'm using IKEA Dream Kitchen website from 2005, made by Forsman and Bodenfors, a Swedish design agency. And the reason I use this is because it's using kind of like pretty advanced levels of CGI in it, like that's akin to the Matrix. You've got like bullet time here, for example. And the amount of investment this must have taken, I would have thought would have been, quite a lot. I think the moment at which brands are using Matrix-style CGI budgets for their website for kitchens tells you something about what's happened to the web. It's gone to the next level. So we're using the IKEA Dream Kitchen website as our final exhibit in the show. I think the interesting is like the websites in the last bit of the show, like the City Curator and the IKEA Dream Kitchen, they don't look that dated.
No.
They look like they could still be valid today. So unlike some of the earlier exhibits where they are a bit clunkier, these ones I think stood the test of time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They do. Okay, so this is the last computer in the exhibition, ASCII Cam.
Yep. So this exhibit was made especially for the show by a colleague of mine called Mike Farrow at ESOP Agency, where I'm digital director. And what we're trying to do with this particular exhibit is just demonstrate the layer of code that sits below everything. One of the first exhibits in the show is an image created by Ken Knowlton at Bell Labs in 1966. It's one of the first images that's been created by a computer, and that opened up the world of computers to an audience beyond computer scientists, beyond engineers. This almost does the opposite. It tells the whole world that there is a layer of engineering below everything that we see.
Fantastic.
And it's a bit of fun. It's hooked up to a dot matrix printer, so if we pose here and press the button, it takes a photograph. And then we get a chance to print it out at the other end of the room on the dot matrix printer. There it goes. Listen to that beautiful noise.
Amazing.